Good morning. You're joining my To Do About Something today, and I'm Donna. Well, it's a beautiful day to work out into the garden. It's kind of cloudy. It's a little cool. I feel like there might be some rain in the air. We'll have to see if that comes to pass or not. And if it does, then we'll have to cut today short. Well, today I want to be planting some containers because it's that time of the year. I've got these beautiful plants out here. They are just wanting to get into some containers, and so I've got to get them planted today. And if it does rain on them, well, that would be a wonderful thing. That would be some good water on them. That didn't come from the city water that we're hooked up to. So I always love the rain, and I'm glad for it that it helps out our watering when we do our planting around here. Now I am outside in a neighborhood, so you may hear neighborhood noises. There are going to be cars around, neighbors doing things, all kinds of noises. And that's just part of being in a neighborhood, and that's where I live. But I wanted to invite you today out here as I planted my containers. I have been promising a video about planting these containers, and I'm excited to share it with you and to show you these containers that are being planted today. Thank you for joining me. You know you're welcome. Glad to have you here with me today. Always appreciative of your time that you take to spend with me. Now I've had a dilemma. I didn't get my planters planted because I could not find coconut liners. Well, Donald was out at a local store that we have near us, and he was able to find the liners. So he picked up 4 of those. So we'll have the liners we need today to plant our hanging baskets. I'll share with you the liners he picked up here. We had a hard time finding them, and then when we did find them, they were pricey. This 16-inch liner was $10.99, and he got 2 of those, so that was $22. And then he found the smaller liners here, the 12-inch liners, which is what we need right here, and they were $4.99 each. So he got 2 of those. So it ended up being, he said he spent $34 in these coconut liners, getting these 4 coconut liners for our hanging baskets this year. And that seemed a little expensive because I think in the past when I bought these coconut liners, I spent around $5 each for them, even for the larger ones. But everything's gone up in price, so I wasn't expecting them to be much cheaper. I do try to get at least a couple of years out of each one of these liners. I am going to be researching different material and maybe experimenting with a few hanging baskets this year and see if I can't find something that's a little more cost effective for my garden, because you know this is a budget-friendly channel. So by the time I take the iron baskets that I've already had and we spray paint those, and then we add these coconut liners and the soil and the flowers that I had to buy because I'm behind on planting my flowers this year, I think we're going to have about $40 in each one of these hanging baskets. When I go to the store, I'm going to see what is available, and I'm going to see if it's more cost effective for me to plan my own hanging baskets or to go ahead and just buy them already made. It's come to that, to weigh it out, to make sure that I'm getting the best bargain for this garden and for my budget. But today there will be a few things that didn't cost a lot of money. They'll just cost the plants that I put in them because I already have the stuff that's already here. And I'm going to show you a few of those containers and just make use of what I already have on hand that can be beautiful. They can be really beautiful, taking common objects that you have around, common containers that you might have around, and turning them into another use. And so that's what we'll be working on today, and we'll get started with that. Well, here are these 2 planters that I'm going to take and replant these today. They're just on this little stake, and it stays right here in the middle of the garden. Now, I'm not on my potting bench this morning. I'm not sure. I may have to move. I've got it set up right here on the sidewalk with this little bench that I've got, but I think I am going to bring it over to the potting bench. It would just be easier. Donald's over here working on the trellis here on the rose bush. You know, this rose bush has needed a new trellis for a while so it can go up the side of the house. And look what he's found. So he's going to be careful not to disturb that. Tiny little babies.
Yeah.
That's a tiny little bird's nest right there. So he's going to be really careful not to hurt that. Now the first step in repotting your baskets would be to just gather up your baskets. Now we'll have to empty out what's in here so that we can replant, but I do like this ivy that's hanging here. You want to dump out the contents of your basket from the last year. There's some ivy growing in that that's really beautiful. Donald's going to try to save it so we can reuse it. We can reuse that ivy in our hanging basket. And you can see that liner has just dilapidated after a couple of years. Put it up here, honey. I reuse those in smaller containers that just need a little drainage. Well, now he's going to take this. I'm interrupting his work today. He's got a lot going on. But we're just going to take this, these hanging basket wire forms that we've got here, and he's going to spray paint those black. Put a new coat on them. It just makes them look newer, fresher, better. Gives it a updated look, and you know, looks prettier in the garden. So he'll be doing that. He's going to spray paint these black for me.
Let me get it. Yeah, I got the flat enamel.
Okay.
Metal.
All right, Rust-Oleum flat enamel. He's going to get each one of those sprayed up looking good, and then we'll go to the next step. Now I'm mixing up the soil right here in this little bucket that I think that I'll need. I've just got some of the composted soil, and then I added some sphagnum peat moss here. This premium sphagnum peat moss that came from Canada. It's a product of Canada, and it holds moisture. So I want to make this soil that I'm mixing pretty peat moss rich so that it'll hold more moisture in these hanging baskets. So I'm just mixing this stuff up right here in my little bucket, my little gardening bucket. And there's a lot of composted soil down in here. And I'll just mix that as I go and put them in these hanging baskets. I'll just throw this in while I'm waiting for my baskets to dry over here. This is what happens to your beautiful ceramic planters when you leave them outside to weather. This is why I need a little potting shed to store things like this in. So see, this is broken. I can't use it for anything. And the same thing happened here. So I've got a broken ceramic pot that I can't use anymore because I left it outside. Now let's see what we have here to help drainage. I've saved some styrofoam blocks to put down in the bigger containers so that it won't take as much soil. So they're up under here. And there's some perlite here. Let's see what I have. Maybe to mix in with the soil so that these hanging baskets will drain good. Now I've got some perlite here. It improves drainage and aeration in potting mixes. So it helps prevent soil compaction, and that's exactly what I'm going to need to do. I'm going to need to add some of this to my soil so when I put it in the hanging baskets, it's not one big clump where the water runs around the edges and doesn't get to the center where the plant's roots are. So I'll be adding a little bit of that to our soil mixture. So what I'll do with this perlite is I will mix it as I put the soil into our baskets. As I plant them, I'll go ahead and add the perlite at the time of planting so that it'll be what it needs to be for each individual basket. While my planters are drying over there with their paint, I'm going ahead and put this perlite in this container. I think I'll just put it in with it already in the bag. And then that way it'll be a little sturdier, it'll stand up a little bit on its own, and I can pack it down and put the lid on it when I'm finished and store it over here until I get my potting shed. Okay, I've laid the bigger basket out here. Donald did not spray the underneath, he just sprayed the back part that will show. I have one of the 16-inch baskets here. And I'm just going to tuck it in. It will settle on its own, so I don't have to worry a lot about that. I'm just going to go ahead and load it up with some of the soil and the peat moss, the sphagnum peat moss from Canada. And I'll incorporate a little bit of that perlite in as we go. Just mix it in there a little bit. Get this earthworm out. Earthworms are good in your soil. They are not good in your hanging baskets or your plants. All right. Now to get started, what are we going to put in this basket? I've got the petunias that I got. Now, a rule of thumb for hanging baskets or for planters of any kind is to have what they call a thriller, a spiller, and a filler. So it's a thriller, filler, and a spiller. So that's what I'm going to try to plant in here today. I think my thriller is going to be this beautiful coleus right here. I'm going to plant that as my thriller. Usually that would be your tallest plant, and it would be predominant in a predominant space. I'm going to have to add a little more soil in here to get this up where it needs to be. And I'm going to plant my coleus, and that's going to be my thriller. And then I'm going to use this beautiful petunia, which somewhere in the warehouse they got it mixed up and threw a little beautiful plant in here that's not what it's supposed to be. It's not a petunia, but that's okay. It'll be beautiful in this hanging basket. So I'm gonna break these roots up just a little bit. They've been in that pot. So I'm just gonna pull them apart just a little bit without damaging them too much. And I'm gonna put my filler in. Now that was a little bit of a bigger plant, so it's taking up a little bit more room. I'm gonna take just a minute and clean this plant up. Pick out some of these wilted and dry leaves. Where it come from the nursery, it didn't get the attention that it needed to stay beautiful. So I'm just gonna take a minute and pick off these yellowed, dried, spent blooms and leaves. Just clean it up a little bit. No, he does not. I'll help you. Let me take a break. Sorry, the grandkids are here and they needed some help. So we'll go ahead and get our filler in. And of course it is definitely filling up this space. Now, this coleus doesn't look much like a thriller right now because it's on the small side, but it will grow and fill up. And they are tremendously beautiful with their leaf color. I'm just going to go ahead and put a little bit more soil to lift it up a little bit more. So now, we've got our thriller, our filler, which is this petunia with this little bonus plant growing out of it. And now we've got to make room for the last thing that needs to go in this hanging basket, and that's the spiller. This is some ivy that Donald saved from the previous hanging basket. It came back in this hanging basket from last year. So we're just going to put it right back in this hanging basket. We'll continue to neaten up as we go on our little blooms and flowers, things that's already spent. We'll just trim off here. Encourage new blooms and new growth. And of course we'll feed it after we get everything settled where it's supposed to be. So here's our thriller, this coleus. Here's our our filler. And then here's our spiller. So I'm just going to put a little more soil in here and fill in these blank places. And this basket will be planted. Well, here's a grub worm that somehow got in my soil. We won't need that. I'm just mixing this perlite in as I go. Now, I will not be able to show me hanging this basket as it's going to take 2 hands for me to hang it. But as soon as I get it hung, I'll share with you how it looks. So now I'm going to water this hanging basket in. So here is the basket hanging here in all of its glory, with its thriller, its filler, and its spiller. Now this, what I've got here is ivy, and I'm going to have to be careful with this ivy because I don't want it in this bed, middle bed. It will take over. So whatever spiller you have, just remember to keep it trimmed if you need to. This one I'll let grow a little bit, but I do not want it on this, in this flower bed, so I'll have to watch that. But I'm going to go ahead and water this in after planting it. I'll have to keep this watered. I'll have to water this at least once a day, sometimes twice a day, depending on the hot weather. It'll be out here in the full baking sun, but I think petunias can take out. I know ivy can, and we'll just have to see if this coleus makes it out here in the sun or not. Sometimes it likes it best with a little shade. But this is full sun out here, and there it is. I just think it's beautiful, and it's hanging out here in the middle garden, and we'll keep a check on that, and I'll give you updates on it and let you see how it grows and see if it looks the way that it needs to look. And I've got a few more hanging baskets to plant. It looks like it's a little bit of a strain up there on this. I'm going to have to wash that hanger, that stake that it's on, and the poor thing looks like it's weighted it down a little bit, but we'll even all that out here in a little bit. Now I just use Miracle-Gro in my hanging baskets when I water them. I just follow the instructions on the package, and that seems to keep everything pretty and fed while they're hanging up for the season. Now I'm just going to go ahead and do the exact same thing with these two little hanging baskets that I have right here. Go ahead and get the price tag off of the coconut liners. Just drop them down in there. And I have decided to go ahead and use these sweet potato vines. I'm going to go ahead and use them as my spiller. So I'm going to put one of each of these in this hanging basket, one each of the sweet potato vine. So these are our spillers. I'm doing a little bit out of order here. Our spillers should come last, but they're going on in here first. Break up these roots just a little bit. Go ahead and put some soil in here. Add the perlite for good drainage. Now I think our thriller will be this beautiful ageratum. So I'm just going to work that in. Let me scoot this one over here and go ahead and work on them both at the same time. This ageratum will grow up and get taller and be more predominant in the whole basket. And then I'm going to use the sea roses. I'm going to use the sea roses as the filler. Or the portulaca, as some people call it. We always call them sea roses. And they will fill in. I think if the basket is fuller, what happens with that is it shades itself a little bit. The sun is not quite so scorching on it. And it helps it to retain a little bit of the moisture. I'm going to add an impatient as a filler because I see this, I have a little space to do that. I'll just add one of those red impatient flowers there in the middle. Now I'm going to go ahead and fill these with soil. Just work it in around these plants as needed. Be sure these roots are covered up. And then we have one of our smaller baskets planted. I am not sure where the thriller, filler, and spiller phrase came from. I've heard it from different places. I've heard Martha Stewart use it in some of her videos. I've heard books. I've read a book that had that in it. So I'm not sure where the thriller, spiller, and filler thing came from for the flowers. The little formula that you follow to make sure you have what you need in your little hanging baskets and your container gardenings, but I like it. It helps remind and kind of guide you of what you want to put in your hanging basket. Unless you have a specific theme, you may have a specific theme that only requires certain plants, and of course that's That can be beautiful, and that's fine too. But just the thriller, filler, and spiller little thing will help remind you what needs to go in. Now these are ready to hang. We'll hang them and then we'll give them water. Now we'll just go ahead and water these in. And there we go. We have a beautiful addition to our garden. We've got all these beautiful flowers in these hanging baskets. And they look pretty. They're a welcome addition. Now, as promised, I'm going to show you something that didn't cost a lot of money. It's just using something I had here around the house. I've probably showed you this in a few videos. It's just this little bucket that has a hole in it. It's no longer good to use for a bucket anymore. It won't hold anything. It won't hold water. I've used these old coconut liners out of my old hanging baskets. I've put these to use. They're too broken down to use in a wire basket, but I can use them in this container to slow down the release of water out of that hole a little bit. Now I'm just going to fill this with dirt. Now the plant that I've chose for this is this geranium. I love geraniums. It's one of my favorite things. This one was $10. I think I'm going to leave out the filler and the spiller. I think I'm just going to make this a specimen plant and just leave the one geranium in this pot. Keep it just really simple. I'm going to go ahead and get the scissors and trim this up a little bit. I'm going to get some of the less than attractive parts off of this plant. Some of the plants, leaves that are dried and turned yellow. Clean it up a little bit and give this plant more space to grow. And go ahead and water that. Look how beautiful. That would be beautiful as a centerpiece on the table or just as an accent plant anywhere. Well, that's what we got planted today. That's about all the time span I have to work on it out here. We'll be joining me later. I hope you join me for another video that's going to have some of the other plantings, some of the other things, container plantings that we're going to have going along. I hope this gives you some inspiration. Makes you want to get out and plant some planters or some hanging baskets and add beauty to your garden. The beautiful peonies here, they're coming to the end of their bloom, a few of them, some of them's just opening up. And I wanted to share with you one of my favorite things that happens in the garden. This is a copper pot that I had back here. It's a hand-hammered copper pot. I love to add copper accents to my garden. It's something that I have always done as long as I've been a gardener. Here's a little handmade copper leaf that I have in my collection. But look at this beautiful verdigris color. Now this is what copper looks like when it oxidizes. Look at that beautiful color on that beautiful hand-hammered copper pot that I have right there. I think that is one of the most beautiful colors in nature. I love it. I think it's beautiful. Wanted to share that with you today. Wanted to share with you one of my favorite things in the garden. Thank you for joining me today. And like always, until next time.